This is Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net with a look at the dominoes that are falling for, against, affecting Donald J. Trump and the Trump Organization from the end of September 2023 to the end of October. Very short time frame. A lot is happening. Now, two big things happened on September 26th, which is the first chart that I have here. The one that has wildly been in the news was a New York court granting a motion for summary judgment on behalf of the state of New York, finding that Trump Organization had wildly falsified information, financial filings for years, and ordering the cancellation of the business registrations of any entity owned by Trump Organization, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and the Trump Organization CFO, Weisselberg. So this basically means that the intertwined spiderweb network of entities that Trump and the Trump Organization have used to own and maybe even shroud ownership of a lot of different assets and properties have now been ordered to be dissolved and placed in a receivership. Now, there's a short period for getting a stay, but that runs out by the third event that we're going to look at here. That runs out by the middle of October. So that's thing one that happened on September 26th. The second thing that happened on September 26th was that a judge in Scotland found that Trump had wildly devalued, committed financial fraud in reporting involving his golf course in Scotland. So two legal proceedings, long-standing fraud involving how property had been handled, both coming down on the same day. What was going on? Well, we're going to look at a few things in his chart. I've got the transits at noon in New York on the 26th. The order actually came down a few hours later, and all that really affects is the degree of the moon. But I want to point out a number of things that are really important here in terms of the dominoes. Now, look that the nodes of the moon, where they currently are, and I know that's a crummy drawing there, north node in Aries, south node in Libra, going across the houses in his chart that deal with, in the third house, south node, old behavior in Libra, would be papers, documentation, agreements, deals, and the north node in Aries, Mars ruled Aries, in the house of legal proceedings, also foreign matters. Let me redraw this. Let's see if this looks any better. Okay, so we've got North Node in Aries, South Node in Libra. They're both at 25. They have been at this degree since the beginning of September, and they will stay there until the middle of October. And look at what they're doing. They are exactly squaring his Venus, money planet, in Cancer, sign of family, in the 11th house of organizations. The Saturn-Venus conjunction is the signature for his money, for the Trump Organization, for the family organization, for the business that has his name on it, that his children have worked in, that he inherited from his father, that Saturn. And the nodes of the moon squaring that Venus puts the money and the financial dealings very much in the spotlight here. And there's a terrific pressure. And the nodes move backwards. So as we get into the later part of October, they're going to move from exactly squaring that Venus to squaring the point between Saturn and Venus, and then ending up exactly squaring that Saturn. So this is an inexorable pressure. He's lived through this before. It happened 19 years ago. A number of the influences we're going to talk about, he's lived through before, but it's the convergence, the confluence right now that is causing all the dominoes to go. The square from the north node to that Saturn is going to be exact in December. Just hang on to that. Now, notice that down here in the second house of his money and resources, there are a couple of placements here that are really telling for how he has conducted his life. He has Neptune in Libra in the second house. His real talent is puffery, flim-flam, being a con man, the grift, creating the illusion of agreements or having illusory agreements or having agreements that look one way but really are something else. Well, the sun and its illuminating power is moving onto that Neptune as of September 26th. And as the week goes on, it will actually cross that. That's going to end up being important by the end of the week. So keep that in the back of your mind. The other placement in his second house of money and resources that's important for all this is Jupiter in Libra. That's like incredible luck. People say, where has the Teflon come from? What has he always been able to pull off? Well, that expansive, like really big, flashy deals is in an exact trine or an easy flow to his Uranus in the 10th house. So he's always made a splash. He's always been a figure that has brought a lot of attention to himself, perhaps divisive. He's a chaos agent. It's one of his many skills here. And when that Jupiter gets pressured, or when the Uranus gets pressured, then he just amplifies more and more and more what he says. Big, 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 big. This is, living with gold, everything, his name on everything. Well, look at what's going on. Mars in Libra, Mars, planet of action, Mars, the attack planet, the warrior god in Libra, sign of the courts, has just moved across his Jupiter, and it's setting up, sensitizing, setting a trigger in place or a massive line of dominoes that are going to get flicked down in the middle of October. So this is part of the buildup. It's approaching the solar eclipse degree that will happen on October 14th. And notice again, Mars in Libra, Mars in the courts, men in courts, 2 male judges involved on September 26th as Mars moves along. So right now it has just activated that Jupiter and then careened up into the Uranus. As it moves along, it's going to exactly trine his north node. So something that you might end up thinking, this feels like it is fated. Then it's going to sextile his moon, which is an opportunity aspect. And then it's going to trine his sun. And as it does, then the next thing is much more important that will happen. It's going to square his Saturn. So it's setting up, pressurizing something that's going to get hit again even more in December when the nodes complete that square. And then it's going to square the Venus in Cancer. So more is coming. And interestingly, the exact Mars squares to Saturn, authority, a male figure, demanding accountability, bringing things in involving the family, and then squaring Venus, money, maybe women. That happens exactly October 2nd and 3rd, and then 5th and 6th, 2nd and 3rd, first week of October for both of them. 2 big things happening, 2nd and 3rd. So this is setting up and sensitizing and kind of mashing on things that are going to end up being important. So the second round of dominoes happen with the full moon on the 29th, on Friday the 29th. So, and this is the buildup to quite a lot. Now notice that the moon is at 6 degrees Aries, the sun is at 6 degrees Libra, and this is on Trump's Neptune in Libra. So the Mars ruled full moon, bringing something to a head, pulls in his planet of grift, of the puffery, of fraud, essentially. So it's exactly hitting that, and it is squaring his Mercury in Cancer. This is making a T-square, much like the nodes are making a T-square to Venus. The full moon on the 29th makes a T-square to Mercury in the 11th house. Does somebody squeal? Does more information come out? Does a family member start speaking up? Is this a throwing somebody under the bus moment? I would expect that at a minimum, there will be a tremendous amount of extremely emotional language coming out. Not that we have seen any of this before. A few more things. That moon, that Aries moon, is going to very quickly contact a bunch of stuff in his chart. It's going to make an opportunity aspect to his Uranus. So, well, no, first, hold on. It's going to trine his Pluto in the 12th house. Okay, so let me translate that for you. The moon in fighter mode is moving through his 8th house of investments, of shared money, of other people's money. And it is moving through. As it moves through, the first thing it does is it makes an easy flow into Pluto and Leo in the 12th. The 12th house is a place where hidden things happen, backroom deals, things coming out, self-sabotage, self-undoing. And this could be an indicator of not just the financial fraud with Pluto being there, and a huge amount of it, by the way, but also an indicator of dominoes starting to come to light and topple involving money laundering. That's just a very strong possibility with that. So as the moon continues to move through the sign of Aries, it is in an opportunity aspect to his Uranus and then his North Node. So something comes out that feels really faded. It then trines his moon. Maybe there's some stuff that comes out involving foreign countries. I believe that there is a statement that's been made somewhere in one of his either filings or his, could have been his statutory filings, something with the state of New York, a claim of having an open line of credit with the country of Saudi Arabia. See if something about like along those lines doesn't come out. And then there's going to be a sextile or an opportunity aspect to the sun. So this is all highly, highly personal that is occurring. And then notice that the moon is going to square the Saturn Venus conjunction in the 11th house, which is basically Trump org. Okay, so you can just look at that Venus and the Saturn together represent his organization and his family money, or at least the setup for it. So we've already seen that Mars is squaring that is going to be squaring it next week. The moon is going to pulverize it before we get into the weekend. He has lived through this before. There have been full moons in Aries before, but not all of this stuff happening at once. So that's part of what makes this all so important. And it's also really important to see what's happening with Mercury. Mercury, planet of communication, also rules money. I'm sorry, not money. The court filings. It rules the papers. It rules the documentation. And it is exactly squaring his North Node. So if there have been 2 sets of books, there's been talk about that. That will be an issue that comes to light and becomes unescapable with this Aries full moon. If there have, and there have been some allegations that properties were valued one way for loan purposes, another way for tax purposes, same property, different numbers. that might come to light or end up being something that starts to play out very much in this particular proceeding, which is set to go to trial next week. And let's notice what else. Mars, the warrior planet, down here is in an exact opportunity aspect to his moon in the fourth house. This is actually really threatening his, not just his base of security, but possibly even where he lives, his actual physical home. It definitely is an attack on his family. And Mars is also trining his sun. So there is an extremely personal aspect to all of this. Final thing I want to mention, Neptune, cosmic fog machine, planet of illusion and delusion and lies, in the 8th house of investments and other people's money. It is in an adjustment aspect to his Mars, how he has presented himself, how he has pushed himself forward. And it's moving toward a trine to that Venus. We'll see that actually become exact as this goes on. More happening, but those are the big points. So this is the next round of dominoes going. Then let's look at the beginning of October. On October 2nd, the Trump Organization trial, which now is pretty much just on valuation. There are a few counts of fraud that are yet to be determined. Only one big one was decided in the summary judgment. This is when the trial is supposed to start. And notice at this point that Mars, planet of push, the warrior planet in the sign of the courts, has moved into an exact square with Saturn, a demand for accounting, a demand for accountability, for reckoning, for consequences. And it pulls in that Venus as well. That particular part of the square becomes exact toward the end of the week. Notice also that the moon, which is like the atmosphere, what's going on in the public, the moon in Taurus has to do with money, value, and it's in the 9th house of litigation, legal matters, also foreign dealings. So the moon in money is it's squaring. Well, first off, so it's in an opportunity aspect. It's moving into an opportunity aspect to that Saturn and that Venus. So there's a possibility of a doorway opening or a window opening and getting some tangible information. And there could be kind of a shocking or startling or a disruptive nature of it, because the moon is right up there against Uranus, the cosmic change agent, the guy that lobs lightning bolts and changes things really, really drastically. And that moon is also moving into a square to his Mars. He will fight, and he will really fight, whether there is any, but there is the public really going on about this. And with the moon being in Taurus also, I think that is an indicator of the fact that there is a female prosecutor involved in this. And notice by this time, Neptune, cosmic fog machine, in an exact trine with that Venus. So a lot could be coming to light about fraud with investments, with insurance, with banking. All of those are 8th house matters, with other people's money. Interestingly, there is also a big event on the next day, October 3rd. There is a deposition scheduled in Trump's defamation lawsuit against Michael Cohen, who is the person who tipped New York State off to all of the fraud that is the basis of the lawsuit I've been talking about. Trump is scheduled for something like a 5-hour deposition in his lawsuit against Cohen. And all of this is going to be active. All of these things I've just talked about are going to be active on October 3rd as well. So just watch for many more dominoes falling from all of this. All right, here's the next big gear shift. By the time we get to the Libra new moon, which is a solar eclipse on the 14th, by this point, the time period for a stay of the order, canceling all the certificates, should have run. It's 10 days. He has 10 days from the order on the 26th. And I don't know if that's 10 business days or just 10 days. But this is around the time when, if a court hasn't stayed it, then the cancellations start. And to get a stay, to get a court to put the pause button down, his attorneys, who, by the way, have all been sanctioned, given pretty hefty personal fines for their behavior already in this lawsuit, his attorneys would have to show that he has a substantial probability of winning on the merits. And since a judge decided that the actual numbers on his filings are enough to show the fraud, I think it's highly unlikely that a stay is going to come. So by this point, the process should be beginning for Trump.org to be dismantled. And notice that Neptune, as I've mentioned, Neptune's in its exact trine to that Venus. So we're still looking at where has there been delusion, where has there been outright fraud, lying, having to do with money, involving an organization. More importantly, let's look at what's going on with that actual new moon. So it's down here in the second house of talents, abilities, personal money, and it is, notice that degree, 21. So it's exactly sextiling his moon in the fourth house. So there's something here that is hitting the reset button on his relationship to his home and family. It's also exactly on the doorway to his third house communication. See that that's 21 Libra, 13. So it's hitting the reset button on documents, filings, things he said, papers that went out with his signature, maybe even checks, I don't know, but this brings the paper element of what's going on in this litigation to the fore. And this also could involve other documents, papers, communications, texts. Oh, I don't know, maybe like classified documents with to-do lists written on the back of them. No telling how much more. And since this solar eclipse is resetting all kinds of arrangements, agreements, relationships, and it is Venus ruled. So this Venus in Cancer in the 11th house means not that the Trump organization and what he's been doing with that, and then also by extension, the fraud with that exact trine to Neptune, but it also means women play a huge role. Women play a huge role. So just watch what more comes out because of that. Notice that the sun and the moon, the solar eclipse at 21 Libra, already sensitized by Mars having moved across that spot and going bam, 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 is trining unfettered flow, his north node, his path of destiny, what is fated, where he's headed, and his sun in the 10th house. So this is greatly affecting not just his sense of self, but his public role. Big, big picture in all of this. But there's more going on than what the eclipse itself is doing. Mercury, ruler in the natural zodiac of the third house of communication and all those pieces of paper and filing, Mercury in Libra, sign of the courts, is exactly on his Jupiter which I've been talking about, and exactly trining his Uranus. Something is going to come out as a result of this new moon solar eclipse, even more about deals, even more about agreements, even more about the role of women, and possibly some shocking things. As I know it's kind of hard to think there might still be shocks left, shocking things that we didn't know about. And wait, this is also exactly opposite Chiron in Aries in the sky. Now, Chiron, wherever it's kind of floating around in current time, it can represent wound, like widespread wounds or things that have come up for healing. I have been observing Chiron in Aries as a big indicator of toxic masculinity, of people, especially of men, using their aggressiveness and just going overboard with entitlement and actually abusing underlings and especially women. So there could be really big and shocking information coming out about that as well. Few other things worth mentioning. Venus in Virgo in his first house is moving into a square to that Uranus in Gemini up there very publicly. This underscores the probability of a woman, of women coming out and saying, oh, but wait, also this. And the women are possibly, very probably, underlings, people who were in a servant position. We've already seen the assistant to the White House chief of staff speaking out a lot. More recently, his executive assistant, Trump's executive assistant, has come forward in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. She's the one who said she was routinely given classified documents with to-do lists written on the back of it. So I would not be surprised if we see even more information from women with details of what actually happened that are somewhat shocking. And as Venus continues to move through Virgo, which is going to take a few weeks, she will then be squaring or making a T-square actually to his sun, moon, and nodal opposition. So as October goes on and into early November, you will see, I'm going to say, women coming more and more and more to the fore and actually kicking more dominoes down for him. As this goes on, Mars has left the sign of the courts. Mars is now in Scorpio, which is deep research, investigation, diving into stuff that people normally don't like to talk about, into secrets. It's in his third house of communication. And worth mentioning, the district attorney in Georgia, Fani Willis, has an awful lot of Scorpio. So people aren't going to just go, oh, well, well, as Mars continues its time through Scorpio, it is going to dig up more and more and more and more and more. And then there's an event that adds to that, and that is at the end of the month, there is a lunar eclipse on the Taurus full moon, just in time for Halloween. And this is a couple of days, 5 days, after the first Fulton County trial is set to begin jury selection. That's October 23rd. Ken Chesborough and Sidney Powell are set for trial then. The trial date has not been moved as of the time that I am recording this. And interestingly, this lunar eclipse fits in wonderfully with that. It is at 5 degrees Taurus Scorpio across Trump's house, his houses of legal matters, ninth house, foreign affairs, ninth house, and the third house being, again, communication, papers, documents, deals, texts, phone calls. This lunar eclipse is the final eclipse in a family in Taurus and Scorpio that has been going on for about 2+ years, which is about the amount of time that Fani Willis's investigation has been going on. So this is a massive wrap-up event. And notice that 5 degrees Taurus is exactly in conjunct Trump's 5-degree Libra Neptune in his second house of money and talents and abilities. That Neptune in Libra, that is again his ability to create illusion. That's the showman. That's also the grifter. And something gets rebalanced because of this. Also, that moon in Taurus is squaring, actually the full moon, if you look at it that way. Let me make it easier to see. So the sun is at 5 degrees Scorpio. The moon is at 5 degrees Taurus, and they are squaring his Pluto in the 12th house, hidden deals, hidden money, crimes behind the scenes, power plays, and we'll add to that the moon is traveling with Jupiter, which makes everything bigger that it touches, and opposite that Jupiter, we have Mercury, communication, paper, research, conjunct Mars, action, widely traveling with the sun. So all of this is pushing on and pushing all of the Plutonian behind the scenes, also self-sabotaging behaviors, putting them into focus, putting them into the light. This fits very much with what that particular trial is about. And notice also that at this point, the nodes of the moon at 24 Aries Libra have slid into a square to this little degree that is in between Saturn and Venus in the 11th house. So again, there is this ongoing faded look at the past ways. Here we have an attack coming at it. It's kind of resistance is futile vibe, and they're going at his signature for how he has made money and operated power. So even though he is not the named defendant in this particular iteration of this trial, dominoes are going to be falling, and it will be very, very uncomfortable and revealing. And if anyone in this scenario is going to flip, my money is on Sidney Powell, the woman, okay, the woman in this scheme. And notice I mentioned we still have Neptune in its exact trine to Venus about whatever all these deals were, and that trine is in place until mid-November, and then it comes around again right before New Year's into early February. And remember that I mentioned Fani Willis has an awful lot of Scorpio in her chart, and the sky is going to be powering that up like crazy with the sun, the information planet, the communication planet, Mercury, and the planet of action, Mars, in Trump's third house. He may be making death threats at this point. That would be new. As this goes on, a couple of other times to keep in mind. April 2024, I'm going to go back here a second. April 2024, there is going to be a follow-up solar eclipse at 19 degrees Aries. That's going to from an opposite direction hit on what has been going on, whatever is really where the reset button hits, where the big whoosh happens. Because of the Libra solar eclipse, there's another iteration of it in April at the new moon. Then it hits it again, and it hits it from the vantage point of other people's money and the fraud. And then the other thing to watch for when the final hit that happens, you'll notice we haven't talked about this. Uranus in the sky, Uranus. Unpredictable change agent, chaos agent, comes out of the blue, unforeseeable. It acts in ways that you can't see it creeping up. It's suddenly there. Uranus has been hanging out right at the doorway to Trump's 410 axis. That's that angle going down the middle of the chart is where he is at home in himself, his physical home, and where he is at home out in the world. In April, Uranus is going to cross over into the 10th house. It's going to cross Trump's midheaven. And that's when the wrecking ball hits. And it is fruit basket upset, even down to affecting where he physically lives. And one last ongoing influence that I want to point out to you involves Neptune, planet of delusion and lies, in the 8th house of other people's money and investments, making an inconjunct or an adjustment aspect directly at Trump's Mars. But look here, also Pluto in Capricorn in his 5th house, children, also making an adjustment aspect to that Mars. This is a configuration called a Yod, Y-O-D, or a finger of God, with Neptune, the lies, and Pluto, corruption, pointing to him. Kind of inescapable. This configuration is it's been around, hanging out in the sky for the last couple of months, and it's going to gradually abate. By the end of the year, Pluto is going to move away from this degree. In January, it moves into Aquarius, and Neptune is retrograding further and further away from us. So basically, Pluto's going to be out of the picture as we get into 2024 in terms of the impact on this Mars. Neptune will still be making the adjustment aspect, or the quincunx or inconjunct, however you want to call it. But for the fall of 2023, this is ongoing, it's constant, and the finger is pointing directly at him. So, as Rachel always says, watch this space. Dominoes are falling. There's more to come. You've got some beats to watch, some moves of the celestial clockwork to watch out for. Thanks. Oh, follow me. My site, empowermentunlimited.net. I have weekly and monthly and new moon and full moon forecasts. Hope to see you there.